And in the blink of an eye, Honkai Star Rail has reached its 3rd anniversary with 4.2 right around the corner, with pretty much one of the best HSR live streams I've seen recently in terms of production quality and the number of content. Hope my viewers that are watching this have done something productive with their lives in the past year, and if not, it's never going to be too late to start right now. Hey guys, MrPokke here. So right now, the biggest question in your mind is probably going to be the pool value between Silver Wolf Lvl 99 as well as Evanescia, the two big elation units shown to be a main DPS with their respective teams, alongside with a pretty decent lineup of reruns ranging from our girlfriends to meta units. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. So for the very first thing with regards to the pool income, since this is going to be the 3rd anniversary of Honkai Star Rail, the pool income is actually going to be abnormally high, with more than 40 pools just from the web events as well as daily logins, not inclusive of any of the events, new maps, endgame content, currency war update, and much more. So if you're gonna be a player that also skipped version 4.1's Asheville as well as their respective reruns over the past 4 weeks, then it is possible that you're looking at well over 100 limited pools, if not even more than that. That being said, do remember to adjust your pooling plans as well as expectations accordingly in the future, and don't go overboard this patch and run dry when the future update is gonna be coming. Now, between the 2 rate up as well as 6 rotating rerun banners we have at the moment, the key interest will definitely lie within either Silver 9 or Evanescia, depending on who is going to be the main push and who is going to be the side push, since they are going to be both elation main DPS shown with 2 completely different teams from one another, despite them being elation classes, reducing the likelihood of both units being ran in the same team. Although that being said, it will be quite interesting if something like a sustainless Firefly is going to be happening with Firefly plus Rare Bar break teams, so you could run Evanescia plus Silver 9 in the same exact DPS format, but that's going to be something for the future to decide. Now regarding Silver Wolf Lvl 999, I'm just going to be calling her Silver 9. Early access is going to be coming this Wednesday to take a deep dive into Bro's kit, so detailed guide is going to be coming very soon. The elation main DPS is going to be coming with a built-in true damage, skill point recovery, punchline generation, as well as absolute cinematic effects. She also does have a unique blind box mechanic that triggers on every single skill point consumption on the team, applying various attacks depending on the blind box, which would suggest extremely high synergy with Sparksy. So for elation mains, this is pretty much going to be a 10 out of 10, otherwise a potential 7 out of 10. So whether or not you're going to be pooling or not pooling, yes, this is going to be our second global passive. The effect of removing the team's crowd control is not going to be game breaking, similar to how you get a quality of life from Castorice Live, making zero cyclers as well as streamers a little bit easier. If you do not like Silver 9's design or do not want to play Elation Flagship, I would not be spending any of my pools into a unit just for their global passive, as you'll be much better off spent in a unit, team, or Eidolon you actually enjoy playing, gaining far greater benefits. On a side note, Silver Wolf does have one of if not the best techniques in the overworld, where a summon Pac-Man thingy will auto-detect the enemies to one-shot them with technique points except for elites. So for new players, you will have a breeze exploring at the start of the game, and I might say that this is pretty much one of if not the best patch to actually start Honkai Star Rail in, with the added quality of life that we have been talking about in our previous live stream. So purely based on the marketing budgets, animation, lore, regardless if Silver 9's damage is gonna be able to maintain its meta placement over the next couple of months, this has extremely high signs pointing towards her being the main push of our elation flagship, just like how Firefly is gonna be having a higher budget compared to Repa as well as Boot Hill, whether you like their meta placements or not. Now, based on our past experiences with Firefly and Break in version 2 and Castorice and Remembrance in version 3, both girlfriends or rather teams have shown to perform extremely well with very high usage rate across the board in their respective Super Break as well as Remembrance archetypes. They also got various buffs in terms of getting either new teammates, new enemies, or shield environments. From the perspective of meta chasers, the Elation Flagship will likely have its value following the same trajectory as Super Break as well as Remembrance when they slowly gain more cost investments via teammates over time, meaning that even right now, the final team has not yet been finalized, such as who is going to be the Elation Sustain, or if Yao Guang will face a similar situation as Tribbie when the Elation Cyrene comes in the future, if that is ever going to be happening. Now, regarding Silver 9's mechanics, the unexpected feature was the ability to grant us additional skill points with Sparksy, which is exactly what Sparksy needs for punchline generation, and the said punchlines generated by Sparksy can directly feed into Silver 9's kit, so the synergy can be said to be on a comparable level such as Castorice as well as Evanescia, tying back to my original guess of Sparksy, where Hoyo releases the sub DPS first before the main DPS. Now, for the spot with regards to Yao Guang, she is pretty much going to be looking at the current best in slot in our environment for now, but the position seems to be more generic compared to Sparksy, once again drawing parallel between Tribbie as well as Evanescia's placement in Castorice teams, or even runmate in Silver after the release of Dahlia as well as Fuke. For Elation MC, this is going to be announced as someone that acts as a hyper carry Elation support, capable of triggering an Elation skill as well as punchline generation, so they might be a decent alternative for players who skipped the Yao Guang back then in favor of Sparksy. Now, my personal guess is that towards the end of version 4, we might be getting an even stronger synergy in Silver 9's team in the form of an Elation Cyrene, which could eat very well into the role for Yao Guang going forward, but this is purely just going to be speculation. As of right now, if you're someone that wanted to play the Elation flagship but skipped both Yao Guang as well as Sparksy, waiting for Silver 9's key to be released and then deciding if you want to commit, then I will highly lean towards getting Sparksy first before Yao Guang after securing Silver 9, though for both units, I will first want to see how EMC can pair with Silver 9 and then adjust from there, because at the end of the day, when a new unit is going to be launching HSR, the new environments as well as enemies will greatly favor the new unit, which means that the difficulty for the unit at the start is not going to be as hard when it comes to the performance for their endgame content. Evanescia, a physical attribute with a much higher focus on energy regeneration compared to Silver 9's skill point as well as punchlines requirement. Now, Evanescia also has the ability to store ultimate up to 2 stacks, which is very reminiscent to Argenti as an ultimate based DPS, but I'm not too sure it's going to be getting bonus effects when storing to the maximum stacks, so we'll see how that goes in the future. During the live stream, her teams are also exclusively different from Silver 9, showing EMC, Sunday as well as Huo, two of the units being our energy batteries in HSR, aside from the 4-star Tingyun, once again suggesting a high emphasis on energy regeneration. Evanescia also has been shown to have a built-in self-energy regeneration as well as generating certified bangers, so she does have a baseline level of kit that can work even without the Elation support, which is how the live stream is going to be showcasing her team with the exception of EMC. So for the overall rating, Elation main is going to be a 9 out of 10, otherwise it's going to be a 6 out of 10, because the very first thing we need to establish is that Evanescia at the end of the day is probably going to be a main DPS, which means that we will be seeing 2 different Elation main DPS in the very same patch. This often means that if Evanescia as an Elation unit also wants Elation teammates, her future prospects are a lot more uncertain due to both Sparksy as well as Yao Guang not having as much synergy with energy regeneration, which is what Evanescia is going to be leaning towards. As such, due to the uncertainty as well as the synergy with the Elation teammates, or not being sure what her future teammates are going to be like, there will be a slightly overall rating compared to Silver 9. This is not to say that Evanescia is going to be a worse or better DPS, but purely based on the current information from what we know right now, Silver 9's team is a lot more stable, with high synergy shown between Sparksy and Yao Guang and possibly EMC. So in that sense, players do not need to pull for DPS and hope for the eventual support coming out, which may or may not suit their playstyle preference from the first place. One thing to note is that for Huo, she will be getting a Nova Flare, so she will definitely see better sustain as well as overall usage with most units that we have in the game, likely also being the best sustain we can have for Evanescia as the only option for energy regeneration. Considering that Huo will be in the Gold Companion shop going forward in version 4.2, getting a copy of her as an Evanescia main might be a choice, but also be mindful of a potential mono Elation team for Evanescia in the future, which may replace Huo and most likely going to be Sunday as well. So with that out of the way, let's just jump straight into the actual reruns. First half being Firefly, Dahlia and Castorice, second half being Sunday, Tribbie as well as Feixiao. Now for Firefly as well as Dahlia, I would only recommend players pulling for them if you like playing Super Break, and if you do not want to play Super Break, then just skip them, so not too much to be said over here. In terms of a Super Break's performance, I would say that team's overall seeding is once again hitting a new high due to Firefly's Nova Flare, which is set to extend her combustion mode as long as she breaks the enemies. That being said, I would say that this buff isn't that significant with Dahlia because you should already have 100% ultimate uptime when using both of them in the same team, so we'll see what other changes Firefly are going to be receiving during the Nova Flare update. Aside from that, Break themselves also never really seen long periods of poor performance, especially with Firefly being the main push of Break herself, which is going to be the girlfriend experience and all that. Just to know that if you want to pull Blade from scratch at this point of time, expect a higher cost investment to match up to Elation in newer environments we're having, though if Break gets another raid in the future, this can change again. For players looking into vertical investments, I would recommend getting an E2 Firefly, especially for E0 Firefly owners, followed by either E1 or S1 Dahlia, depending which one do you prefer a little bit more. Now for the Castorice rerun, I would never recommend anyone to pull her just for a global passive unless you want that bit of quality of life, just like how I wouldn't recommend anyone pulling for Silver 9 for the crowd control global passive. In fact, if you have been a Remembrance main for this long without Castorice, but you have been playing, for example, E2 Evernight, then there really isn't too big of a reason to pull for Castorice unless you want to retire your Tribbie or IMC for EMC. Otherwise, for E0 Evernight mains without Castorice and you still want to play the Remembrance flagship, this is a very good cost investment for any Remembrance main, assuming you already have yourselves Hyacinth as well as Cyrene. For vertical investments, I would recommend getting a signature Lyco for Castorice if you have not, followed by getting her E2 going forward in the future. So that's going to be pretty much it for our first phase reruns. Now moving on to the second phase, and that is going to be Sunday, Tribbie, as well as Feixiao. For Sunday, generally speaking, I would not recommend any players to actually get him as of this point of time, with the only potential being maybe Saber as well as Evanescia, although even for that point of time, there might be a little bit of a contention whether or not Sunday will show a lot of value. Generally speaking, for all of our archetypes in Honkai Star Rail, not a lot of teams are going to be sticking to a support like Sunday because they usually already have the teams more or less finalized. We're talking about the Elation flagship, the Break flagship, the Remembrance flagship, the DOT flagship, follow-up attackers. So the only few units that can actually make use of Sunday, they are pretty much going to be units like Jingyuan, Jingliu, maybe Saber, but we have also seen Saber performing very well with a high-speed Sparkle. So Sunday's role at this point in time is just not going to be as valuable, especially if you have not been using him for the past almost more than 2 years. So I would not go for that. That being said, Sunday's S1 does see a little bit of usage just for the energy regeneration if you want to give that for specific supports without wanting to use the S5 DDD. Now for Tribbie, if you're going to be playing this game from scratch, meaning without any copies of Tribbie, I would actually not recommend any players pulling for an E0 Tribbie. Otherwise, if you already have an E0 Tribbie, getting a E1 Tribbie is going to be a very decent cost investment upgrade, so you can consider her for running some teams like D Herda as well as the Tribbie, Hyacinth, and Cypher, Tricycle, or the Wheelchair. But at the end of the day, Tribbie also kind of faces a similar situation with Sunday, where we already have a lot of different archetypes in HSR that does not really require a general resist support anymore. I'm talking about all of the DOT, break, elation, etc. And furthermore, from the environments we have been seeing, single target environments are starting to come up a little bit more frequently, which is where E0 Tribbie is going to be having a very hard time pivoting, especially if you want to compare it to other forms of support, which especially considering we just got ourselves EMC for elation, then the number of teams that you can actually run Tribbie is going to be even lower going forward. That being said, D Herda is probably going to be the only place where Tribbie can still see a home, and maybe if D Herda gets more average edition supports in the future, then we can see Tribbie, especially E1 Tribbie, getting more value over there. And then lastly is going to be Feixiao. You know what? I'm just going to refrain from comment. Okay, for real, right? No rage bait, no whatever, because this is going to be a serious video. Personally speaking, I have a lot of fun experiences playing with my own Feixiao at E2, and she is pretty much one of, if not my most favorite DPS of all time HSR, because Feixiao is Feixiao. Of course, that being said, if you're purely going to be talking about meta, right, zero cycles, what are the fastest clearing teams, best performance in the end game, it is definitely not going to be Feixiao. So only pull her if you really like her and you like the way that she's able to function, or if you really believe that Azrael could bring follow-up team comps to the next stage. But this is pretty much just going to be a personal preference, so take it as you will. So with that, we have pretty much come into the end of our version 4.2's CN pulling opinions. Overall, very big banners with very big decisions between Silver 9 as well as Evanescia. I would say that at the end of the day, Silver 9's team is going to be more stable and certain, with Sparksy as well as Yao Guang having a very strong placement with her, whereas Evanescia does have more room for growth as well as potential teammates if we can see more forms of energy regeneration in the forms of a elation support or a sub DPS. For both teams as of right now, we don't really know who is going to be the elation sustain, and we're not too sure if both teams will end up running the exact same elation sustain as well, or it could just be another situation of like Lingsha with the three different break teams. So from that point, you kind of just have to choose which one you want to go down specifically. For the overall reruns, they're pretty okay, but nothing really worth going out of the way unless you really want to play those specific units for those specific archetypes, like Firefly for your break, Castorice or Remembrance flagship, as well as Feixiao if you really like playing with Feixiao, right? So we've pretty much come to the end of today's content. Let me know what you guys think in the thoughts and comments down below. Word of the day is gonna be wholly overworking, and I will not streaming this weekend, so I can see you guys on the most likely either Monday or Tuesday, right? So join Discord, use code POKE10 for gamers subs. All the best for gacha pools, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.